going to talk about today? I don't know, but the wheel knows, so let's give it a spin. Signs of labor. Ooh, good one. Here. Signs of labor. This is a great question, and I get a lot in childbirth class, is how will I know if I'm actually in labor, right? Especially if it's your first time. You've never been through labor before. You don't know exactly how it feels. And certainly, TV and movies do not get it right. They show a lot of screaming, they show a lot of grabbing, and, real dramatic because obviously it's supposed to entertain us, so it's going to be dramatic. But the start of labor for most people, especially the first time you've given birth, can be a lot more subtle. And if you go to a childbirth class, if you read about contractions, you'll probably see them drawn kind of like this, like a hill, like a, with that peak and the ends kind of trailing off. That is certainly what it feels like, where your uterus just contracts and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. So it kind of peaks like that. And a uterus that's contracting is certainly a sign of labor. But the beginning of labor your uterus can often feel more like a menstrual cramp. Other people have described it like a gas pain. And so it might not have that real peaking look or feel to it. It might just feel kind of like, ooh, I'm a little bit off, a little bit crampy. Usually you will feel the beginning contractions below your belly button when they are actual uterine contractions of labor. Sometimes people feel them in their back more, but they're different from Braxton Hicks in that they don't usually feel like your whole uterus is tightening. They usually feel underneath. So a sign of labor could be, one of them is your uterus contracting, which causes a crampy feeling, which causes maybe even a gassy, pressury, crampy feeling. And sometimes it has a start and a stop, and sometimes it's just kind of a vague feeling that you can't really define the edges, the starts and the stops. So that's certainly a sign of that labor is starting. The second one, which is a topic that we discussed at the very first wheel spin, which has to do with poop, your bowel movements. Often an early sign of labor is having to increased bowel movements or softer bowel movements. So not to the point of necessarily diarrhea, but some, more quantity and softer. It generally is a sign that labor is starting. Sometimes people lose their mucus plug, which is also a topic that we have discussed, and I'll put links in the YouTube description below. And the mucus plug, when the cervix dilates, the mucus plug can come out, and that is a plug of mucus that is kind of like keeps bacteria from getting to the baby. And when the cervix dilates, the mucus kind of drops out, and sometimes it's all at once or sometimes it's little bits. So as you go to the bathroom and wipe, you might notice an increased amount of mucus, and stringy mucus, sometimes brownish because it might have some blood that's older, or sometimes pinkish or reddish. So that's a sign of labor. Another sign of labor might be your water breaking, which has also been a topic we covered on the wheel, and that can happen at the beginning of labor or before labor starts. Rupture of your membranes is the technical term, and that is when you notice fluid leaking out. That doesn't really stop. It starts and stops, but it doesn't stop completely, which would be your water breaking. Other signs of labor, which aren't like super, don't necessarily have to do with your anatomy. A lot of people notice that they feel that nesting urge where they want to clean things or organize things. That's not a scientific sign of labor, but I would say a lot of people have expressed that they experience that before labor starts. Other things that, that start labor, or that might be a sign of labor, or one other thing that can sort of sometimes indicate that labor is on the way is when the baby's head engages in your pelvis. So that is when the baby's head drops into the pelvis. And the way you might know that this has happened is if you have experienced a lot of like feet and kicks and things up in your ribs, and kind of a shortness of breath where you feel like the baby is high, and then all of a sudden your belly feels different shape. The baby feels lower, you can breathe a little bit easier. That could mean that the baby's head has engaged in your pelvis. And sometimes you might hear this called the baby dropping. So I remember going to a grocery store when I was pregnant, and one of the clerks saying, "Oh, you're gonna have the baby soon. Looks like that baby dropped," which I thought was so funny because how do they have any idea that my baby has dropped or not? Sure enough, it was like 2 weeks later that I had the baby, but sometimes people like to give their anecdotal information. So baby dropping into the pelvis sometimes can indicate that labor is on its way. However, babies can also kind of move back and forth, so it's not necessarily a definite sign of labor. But water breaking, mucus plug, loose stools, loose bowel movements, and contractions. Contractions is really our real surefire, okay, something's going on, and it might lead to labor, or it could be the beginning signs of labor that might happen in days. So I would love to hear what you think or how your labor started. Go ahead and please share below. It really helps me. Also, don't forget to let me know if you've seen any of the other videos, or if there's one you liked or one you want to add to the wheel. That sure would help. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps other people find it, and share it with someone else who might find signs of labor helpful today. So I hope you guys have a great day, and see you next time.